Hello, Brad here, just to say we're super proud that the Friday 5pm podcast is sponsored by the Malt Miller, the UK's best home brew store.
We use the Malt Miller for all of our homebrew experiments, as well as tapping them up for advice and binging on their awesome YouTube channel all the time.
That's why whenever we release a homebrew video, we put a recipe kit live on the Malt Miller, so you can brew with the exact same amazing ingredients that we did. The same ingredients used by pro brewers.
So alongside the Malt Miller's nitro-flushed hops, cold-stored yeast and milled-to-order malts, you can pick up recipe kits for our 5 Points Best Bitter, Russian River West Coast IPA, and now the fastest beer in the world, a hazy session IPA that goes from grain to glass in less than 48 hours.
Sign up to their newsletter at tinyurl.com/Malt Miller to get 5% off your first order. With the Malt Miller's amazing customer service and Johnny's 48-hour recipe, you could order the ingredients on a Monday and be drinking the beer by the weekend.
Speaking of which, it's Friday.
It's 5pm.
So enjoy this week's Friday 5pm podcast. Good afternoon, beer geeks. I'm assuming there's not going to be many listeners this week because you're all going to be down the pub, right?
They're all down the bloody pub, mate. Friday, 5pm. Are you joking? Yeah, no one's listening. Maybe they're listening in a fetal position sometime on Saturday afternoon, shaking in their beds at the amount of booze that they consumed the night before, and questioning
what a wonderful thought.
Their life.
Maybe we should do this episode as ASMR to just send some chills down some spines and remind them that life is going to be okay.
It's okay. You will want to drink beer again next Friday.
The anxiety will fade.
Your memory is shot. So by this time next week, you'll want to do it all again.
Oh, God, I laugh because it's true. Bradley, have you been to the pub?
Oh, mate, have I been to the pub? I have been to several of the pubs. Several of my favourite the pubs in South London.
You've been to several pubs?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
man.
was it Monday? Yeah, Monday night I went to Dog and Bell, which I've mentioned many a time on here. Great Deptford boozer. And I drank my first pub pint in however many months. Was it November last year? December?
Yeah, it would have been. I think we went back into lockdown very start of December.
Yeah, so I drank a pint at the Royal Albert. It was my last pint. I think I had a Siren or something, Siren Soundwave. And then my first pint back in was a Colonel Pale. I think it was a Citra one.
It's a strong stuff.
And it was glorious. And just so great to be back in a pub momentarily to order the beer and then going and standing outside on a street with a couple of mates, just watching the sun go down and quaffing great pub fresh pints. So that was awesome. And then last night I went and got sausage and mash at my sort of spiritual home, the Royal Albert in New Cross. So yeah, that was also awesome. What about you, mate? Have you been to any pubs?
Well, I was in a pub on Monday, but I was working. I was filming a promotional video for them for the launch.
Nice.
And I managed to have a slice of pizza and about half of a pint in between takes.
Great
Otherwise,
stuff.
no. I have not been to the pub yet, which is pretty heartbreaking. However, on Saturday, I was shooting photos and hanging around with Miles Jenner, head brewer of Harvey's Brewery, down at Harvey's Brewery in Lewes. So not only did I get out of London, I then went to a brewery and drank lots of beer. So I had a tour with him. He's an amazing guy. Like the stories he can tell, the history. I was learning all about Harvey's yeast, which is 60 years old.
Nice.
He backs it up in a yeast bank, but otherwise it's been the same sort of family, the same descendants for over 60 years. So it's nearly as old as Miles is. And he nearly lost it during the pandemic, which was, he said, if anything was going to take me under, it wasn't, bills, it wasn't wages, it wasn't the lack of sales, it was my yeast dying and my beer never tasting the same again.
Wow, that would have been heartbreaking.
It would have been. You could see genuine fear in his eyes. But we had a lovely time. They've got a little tasting room where they usually finish their tours, and we Had a lovely time sampling through lots of different things. Easter ales, Christmas ales, Imperial Stouts, lots of Harvey's Best. And a lovely, I forget the name of it, but a lovely sort of just hoppy, floral beer that was hopped with an English variety I hadn't heard of. And I can't remember it again.
Nice.
Oh, no, maybe it's just Pioneer. But yeah, a classic British hop. It was lovely.
Amazing. It's a beautiful part of the world down in Lewis for anyone. There's some great pubs there, and obviously Harvey's is just, I think it's one of the most beautiful pubs on the river. It's just very scenic,
brewery,
isn't it?
Most beautiful brewery.
Sorry, brewery. Yeah. I've just got pubs on the brain, Johnny. I'm sort of
Quite
plotting
right,
where I might go this evening. But yeah, man, that's great stuff. Wonderful.
It was a great way, working on a Saturday doesn't get much better than a brewery tour and a couple of hours in a tasting room. I couldn't really complain about that one.
Amen to that.
Yeah, so I have had cask ale despite not having had time to go to the pub yet, but I'm sure that will change this weekend.
Talking of cask ale, Johnny, we did a bit of a video, a sort of almost a love letter to 5 Points Best this week, didn't we?
We did. It was well timed, wasn't it? I didn't really think about it. It wasn't on purpose that we did a story about cask ale the very week that the pubs opened. But yeah, it was very much a love letter to Best Bitter the style and to Maris Otter and Fuggle the hop, all of which make the beautiful 5 Points Best Bitter, which was it's been one of my favourite beers over the last couple of years, certainly in terms of like the beers you keep returning to and having by the pint.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect pub pint, isn't it? That you go to a pub for something like that, which you struggle to get anywhere else. Like, the home keg, the home casks are actually amazing that they've brought out, but they only keep for a few days. Whereas, you know that you can go down your favourite local boozer and you're going to get a great pint of cask whenever you go there.
You'd certainly hope so, yeah. But you make a fine point that cask ale is the one thing that you can't. I mean, there's lots of news about supermarket beer with what Cloudwater did this week, but it's one thing you can't get in a supermarket, and that's cask with a sparkler. So
nice.
It was really nice a couple of weeks when we did our live show with 5 Points to be able to indulge in plenty of cask best. And yeah, I mean, when I do go to the pub, which hopefully is only a matter of hours away, I will definitely be going straight to the cask pumps, not the keg pumps, because I've been drinking a lot of canned beer that's very similar to keg, but nothing like cask.
Something to look forward to, mate.
Something to look forward to, exactly. So if you haven't seen the video from this week, though, there's also something to look forward to there, because it's a great chat with Greg Hobbs, who's the head brewer at 5 Points. He makes amazing beer and is really... I love how in tune he is and how excited he is by the actual ingredients he uses beyond the hops, but also including the hops. And we have a good chat about Maris Otter, a little chat about the yeast and how it adds this pretty unique kind of oakiness to the beer that I'd kind of assumed was the woody element from the Fuggle hops. But actually he says, no, that's a characteristic that they found in the yeast that they use, the classic British ale yeast. So you'll learn a lot, even if you think you know a lot about Best Bitter. Greg's got some insight for you. Did you find any insight in the comments, Brad?
Yeah, I sure did. I got a comment from Alistair Rees who said, great to see Best Bitters getting some love among newer breweries, especially for such an underrated hop as Fuggles. I believe he's based out in the US, and he basically just said it's very difficult to find Best Bitters over there, and Fuggles is very rare. So
when the craft beer movement kicked off in the US, one of the styles that was brewed quite a lot was the ESB. So the Fuller's inspired kind of strong, slightly sweet bitter. So there was ESB over in the States for a long time. I remember drinking Red Hook ESB on my first trip to America as a beer lover and kind of enjoying it, but having it on keg does defeat a lot of the point of that smooth, rich, unctuous kind of Maris Otter feel. So yeah, I think it just wasn't hoppy enough for Americans. Once they got a taste for their own American hops, it sort of died off. And now, as we saw in our 5 Points video, there are American and Canadian breweries doing cask ale in the States, which is really, really exciting. And we saw it also at Forest and Maine. We can put a link to that video in the description for the podcast, because that was an amazing cask ale and saison focused kind of brewery.
Yeah, incredible stuff they're doing out there. It was a real, just a little gem on our trip that time. To find those guys was insane. To think that they're making all those styles over there that we just wouldn't associate with like American sort of brewing as we know it. Kind of mind blowing.
Yeah, and like the setting as well, like this beautiful townhouse, and they decked it out like a classic sort of British pub. It's not our most popular video. It's done okay, but you know, if I wanted to show people that we on the Craft Beer channel don't just focus on the hype stuff and we tell lots of different stories, that's the first one I'd point them to, because it's such a unique setting, such incredible unique beer, like the yeasts that all come from the cherry tree outside and all this. It's just got everything, that brewery, and cask ale at the heart of it sort of shows what, you know, cask ale doesn't need to be this fusty old way of pouring beer in the UK. Like over in America, it's seen as exotic and exciting and hyper craft, and I wish we could give it that reputation over here a little bit, which is why we focus so hard on bitter. One day, mate.
One day we get there.
One day, and for your commenter, I hope it happens for him in the States. Hope it gets a bit more commonplace. Any other comments, Bradders?
I just had one from Guillaume Borosé, who just said, so nice to find this format back of a brewery to meet the brewer. So you know this is something which we obviously historically do a lot on the channel, but with the last year plus of global pandemic, we haven't been able to get out and about, Johnny. So it is lovely to get back speaking to people, the people that make the beers, and going to the places where they make the beers. It's something we're really looking forward to doing again as as we sort of progress into the coming months.
Yeah, 100%. It's been really tough for us to have to, we've had to completely reinvent what the Craft Beer channel has been because of the inability for us to travel. So, we went down homebrew, we created the What Even Is series where we dived into history that was all sort of just research I was doing in books and online and stuff like that. But really, the whole point of the Craft Beer channel when we started it was to get away from that sort of bedroom vlogging, beer reviewing element of BeerTube. So the fact that we've had to stay at home has been really frustrating. There's a comment, I had to bite my lip a little bit. There was a comment on this video from somebody going like, CBC travel all over the world but think the UK is just London. And you're like, well, yeah, it's because we haven't left London since March last year. Like before
Give
that,
us a chance,
I think
mate.
we were pretty even split. We've got videos all over the UK up until a year ago when, the last 3 brewery tours have been London breweries because it was illegal to go anywhere else, mate. So chill your beans.
That's it as well. And also, like, when we're making content, we try and, London obviously is easier for us to make content in because we live here. But, if we go up to the north or wherever, we need to make sure that we can make enough films that make our journey sort of worthwhile, which is why I guess, when people might make a comment about us sort of going around the world. Yeah, we might go around the world, but we've got we're working every single day. 18-hour days cranking out videos while we're there to try and maximize.
And one of us is sober each day because we're driving.
Oh,
that's
the
the real
soberness.
sacrifice.
That is the killer. That is the absolute killer. But so it's, I guess, Once we're able to get back out all around the country, we've got loads of stuff planned.
Absolutely, yeah, and we've already got stuff piling up, stuff we want to make and stuff that we're planning. So watch out for that. We will be getting out of London, we promise. I really enjoyed a comment from Manitoa1, who said, I can't think of another beer style that showcases malt, hop and yeast flavours all at the same time, as well as bitter. Synergy is an overused word, but I've got to agree with the brewer here. And I think that's what the joy of the bitter is. Although it's called bitter because it was to differentiate it from the other less hopped beers at the time back in the 19th century, it's really not about the hops, but it's also not about the yeast or the malt or the water. It's all of those things in perfect balance where you almost don't know what flavour is coming from what part of the beer. It's just sort of amalgamated into one.
That's a really good point. Like where you said, where that sort of woodiness was coming from in best. But yeah, do you think should it be called balance then instead of bitter? We try and rename it.
I think, didn't we say that in the live show? Possibly it should be called Balance,
Yeah,
and that was a
I
good
reckon
line.
so.
Yeah, we need to find a way of putting that on a t-shirt. I think it's great. It should be Balance, not Bitter. And also, bitter's not a very nice term for a beer anyway.
No, sounds aggressive.
So I can understand why people are changing it to amber ale mostly on the labels. But yeah, I mean, we're huge fans of bitter. When I drink in the pub, if I see a bitter on, that's going to be the first thing that I go for if it's on cask, because just for me, that's something you can't get elsewhere. And I don't know, pubs to me smell and taste of bitters in my brain. We're easier there.
Definitely 100%. Kind of, it's in there, isn't it? Hardwired. That's the sort of aroma you might get.
Absolutely, which is probably just spilt beer or the fact that I've already had 2 or 3 in a different pub. But hey, there we go. So this week we have a poetic question. It's almost like Edgar Allan Poe poem.
Yeah.
It's
definitely.
dark and it's moody.
Definitely gothic, yeah.
And it comes from Sean Brewer, who I think this is his 3rd question on the podcast. If you want to mix it up, get some other voices in, you can email your question either written or you can record it to craftbeerboys@gmail.com, and we'll answer it as soon as we get a chance on the next podcast. But this week, we'll hand over to the poet laureate that is Sean Brewer with his bizarre homebrew question.
Hi Johnny and Brad, Sean Brewer here. I've got another question. Once upon a time I used to be a regular home brewer. The world was my oyster. Regularly used to brew some nice pale ales. However, darkness once struck. During the fermentation process, I had an infestation of maggots in the fermenting tub. This spilled over into the kitchen, and unfortunately I've been banned by the other half from ever homebrewing again. However, since watching your homebrew video recently on when you brewed the best bitter, installing a real ale pump in your kitchen, Johnny, very well done, I've been inspired to dust off my gear once again. However, I would have to now caveat this with the fact I can no longer brew in the kitchen, but will have to take my operation outside, which isn't a bad thing because the summer months are ahead. However, I understand there are pitfalls with brewing in the summer, particularly with temperature control. Any advice on kits or other home brewing equipment I should be looking at, or tips when brewing outside, would be greatly appreciated. Thanks guys, love the work and loving beer.
So first, I mean, Sean, you've got to come back at us and explain how the hell maggots... I've heard of infections in my time, but good Lord, maggots.
Maggots, and I mean, maggots don't sort of generally arrive. There won't just be one maggot. There'll be like a plague of maggots. So that just sounds horrendous. I hope you obviously caught them before they turned into a siege of flies, because nobody wants that in their kitchen. I'm not surprised the missus has banned you from brewing indoors, mate. It sounds like that was a wild homebrew session you had going on there, mate.
I don't want to know what yeast you used for that. So yeah, I mean that aside, maggots aside, not a phrase I thought I'd say on this podcast. Brewing outside is fine. It's got its weather challenges, but it's also just nice to be outside. And I mean, maybe I'm just saying that because I've been stuck inside for a year. But I really enjoy brewing outside. I used to homebrew a little bit on my friend's roof terrace. Those are the kind of circles I move in.
That sounds classy.
But I guess the real issue is the fermentation, because that's where you might get an infection or indeed maggots. So brewing outside is really easy. You use an extension cord for your grain father, or a propane burner if you're doing sort of the boiling bag. In terms of the fermentation outside, that's really tricky. The first bit of advice I would say is embrace it. The temperature is going to fluctuate hugely. So the best thing I could say is brew according to the seasons. So if it's going to be really warm, brew a saison, because particularly saisons like the Dubonche strain, they'll be fine at 30 degrees. In fact, they'll love it at 30 degrees. So have a little think about that and see if you can make it work that way. Yeasts, lager yeast like to ferment at about 8 before you cold crash them. So, if it's winter and it's probably around 8 degrees, brew lagers in winter. But there's other stuff you can do. I did some reading to see what other people have done. One fairly good suggestion, which would work in summer, is if you get your bucket fermenter and just submerge it mostly in water, like up beyond the beer line, the actual water itself, even in hot summer, won't vary more than a couple of degrees either way.
So what you're saying is, Johnny, put it in the garden pond.
Put it in the garden pond. Well, maybe not
Nice.
the pond. That'll probably be too cold.
No.
But
okay.
I'm thinking also there might be other creatures in the pond.
Pond life.
Yeah. I'd
maybe
like,
even some maggots.
Maybe even that. But, maybe like if you can get like a bigger plastic bucket to put it in.
Yeah.
Fill that with water up to the water line, and that will just reduce the variation to a couple of degrees. However, you can't really do that in winter because it takes the water could really, really chill down. It might work for cold crashing, but it might not be ideal for fermentation. So winter, stick to lagers basically, and in summer, water bath.
It's very sensible suggestions, Johnny. My suggestion, Sean, is invest in a cave.
Dig a cave.
Do you live near a cave? Could you build a cave? Could you dig a cave? Because I feel like, you kind of want to be working underground. Because as soon as you get to below ground level, the earth keeps a very consistent temperature throughout the year. So, I don't know. What do you think about potentially almost burying your beer, Johnny? Is that insane? There are definitely maggots underground, that's for sure.
Or worms. I mean, there's precedent for that. That used to happen a long time ago, that they would literally, they'd brew the beer and then put the fermenters, usually like an amphora or something, they'd bury it into the ground where the temperature was much more consistent, exactly. Yeah. And probably a little bit lower as well. So that's definitely an option, but I'm not sure whether your partner will be delighted by you digging up the garden.
Well, I guess at least if it's underground, you're not looking at it. You could look at it like that. All she's going to see is the top of an amphora or something, right? My suggestion, Sean, is just buy a big garden gnome, stick it on the top. You don't have to look at it. There you go. Perfect.
There you go. Some less practical. Well, actually, no, the gnome is pretty practical, to be fair to you. The whole digging thing, less so. I don't know, just pretend you're gardening. Like, I'm planting a beer tree.
Making a beer tree. Could you make the fermenter? Could you cover it? Could you do like a home improvement, home makeover show style thing? Maybe you cover it in bamboo on the outside and then stick a plant pot on the top of it. So it looks like a garden feature, but really that's your...
camouflage it.
That's your fermenter. Yeah, you're camouflaging it. So you could say, darling, I've made this wonderful bamboo-clad podium to put your favourite garden plants on top of. What do you reckon? Earn some brownie points, right? There you go. Turn that frown around. You can make it work for you, Sean. I can see it now.
Talking of ways to get partners on side when it comes to homebrewing, I have learned for sure that the best way to justify having a beer fridge and a lot of brewing equipment in your kitchen is to brew exactly what your partner really enjoys drinking. So if she is a beer lover, brew the styles that she'd want to drink, because then it's much easier to justify. It's like, well, you like the last batch. So,
nice.
Yeah, exactly. Less passive-aggressive than I just did it, but that's one way of persuading partners or housemates that there's a benefit to this equipment being here, or to digging up the garden, or to the ugly garden gnome that is now in the middle of your lawn. So yeah, there you go. There's some sound advice from me and Brad about how to persuade people that homebrewing is fine. And that leads us to the end of this week's podcast. We don't actually know what next week's video is going to be currently, because we've reached the end of the current batch, and Brad and I need to meet again and do some filming. We try to meet as little as possible to for COVID reasons. But we will have a very exciting episode, I'm sure, just once we've decided what it is.
Exactly, guys. I mean, also, we do read all of your comments, so, you know, send us your ideas for content that you want us to make. Obviously, I've started lowbrow now, my very lowbrow take on beer cheats for geeks, and I'm looking for all sorts of suggestions on what products I should be reviewing. You know, silly stuff, amazing stuff, things that are life-changingly awesome about beer. You know, send them our way, and I will try and review them.
There we go. Alrighty. Well, love and beer until Wednesday, when, who knows, it might even be a lowbrow episode that we pull out of our asses. But I promise you, it's going to be great either way. The Bubble Podcast is brought to you by the nerds behind YouTube's Craft Beer channel. Head to youtube.com/the Craft Beer channel to watch this week's video and over 400 more exciting episodes. If you love what we do, please do subscribe and even join our Patreon at patreon.com/craftbeer channel. Love and beer.